The clatter of breaking plates echoed through the restaurant as my daughter-in-law threw mine to the ground, glaring at me with pure hatred. "Witch! You should have never come!" she spat, her words cutting deeper than glass. Every eye in the room turned toward us, and I realized this wasn't just anger. It was the beginning of something far worse. "Hi, I'm Bessie. And let me tell you, I still taste the bitterness of that night, the metallic tang of betrayal. Imagine your only son, your flesh and blood, sitting there in cold silence, watching his wife hurl your plate, your dignity, and years of sacrifice to the floor. That was my 60th birthday. But what they didn't know, that poor old mother they were humiliating was about to unleash a truth that would not only freeze their bank accounts, but their entire world. I can still hear the crash. The sound of my plate, fine china, shattering against the restaurant floor, breaking into a million pieces, just like my heart. The whole place went silent, every single eye boring into our table. Harlow, my daughter-in-law, stood over me, her face a mask of pure disgust. And Carlton, my son, my only son, just sat there, staring at his napkin. "Mom, maybe you should go," he finally mumbled, not even looking at me. 60 years old, and I'd never felt so small, so utterly worthless. I'd been so excited for that dinner. It was my birthday, and Carlton had actually called to invite me. After months of unanswered calls, brief, hurried conversations, I truly thought things were finally changing. I'd spent hours getting ready, pulling out my best dress, the pearl necklace Robert, my late husband, had given me before he passed away 5 years ago. I arrived at Bellini's, this fancy Italian place I really couldn't afford, clutching a small photo album I'd put together. Pictures of Carlton growing up. I actually thought we might look through it together over dessert. Silly me. So incredibly naive. The tension hit me like a physical blow the moment I sat down. Harlow barely even glanced at me, typing furiously on her phone. Carlton seemed like a nervous wreck, constantly checking his watch. Still, I tried. God, I tried so hard. "How are the children?" I asked, my voice a little too bright, desperate to hear about my grandchildren. I hadn't seen them in almost 8 months. "They're fine," Harlow snapped, not bothering to look up. I persisted, a fake smile plastered on my face, pushing through the ache. "I brought a little gift for Emma's birthday next week. I hope she'll like it." That's when Harlow finally looked up, her eyes like chips of ice. "We already told you, Bessie. Emma has too many toys. She doesn't need your cheap trinkets." Carlton shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Harlow, please." "No, Carlton!" She cut him off, her voice rising. "I'm tired of her trying to buy our children's affection when she was such a terrible mother to you." I felt like I'd been slapped. A gut punch. I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely there. "You never do you?" Harlow continued, her voice getting louder, drawing more attention. "Always playing the victim. Poor Bessie. All alone in that big house. Maybe if you hadn't been so controlling, Carlton wouldn't have needed therapy." Therapy? This was the absolute first I was hearing of it. I looked at my son, confused, hurt, my heart literally twisting. "Carlton?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's nothing, Mom. It's not nothing," Harlow insisted. "Tell her how she ruined your childhood. Tell her how she never let you be your own person." The waiter arrived with our food, awkwardly placing plates in front of us as Harlow continued her tirade. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. When the waiter left, I tried to reach for Carlton's hand. "Honey, I don't know what." That's when Harlow snapped. She stood up, grabbed my plate of pasta, and with a wild, furious gesture threw it to the floor. "You witch! You should never have come!" The crash silenced the entire restaurant. I felt the eyes of strangers burning into me, sauce splattering across my dress and shoes. "Carlton!" I pleaded, my voice breaking. "Carlton, please!" But my son, the little boy I'd raised alone after Robert died of cancer when Carlton was just 12, the boy I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college, he just sat there. Silent. Ashamed. Not of Harlow, but of me. I grabbed my purse, my hands trembling so badly I could barely stand. "I'm sorry to have ruined your evening," I managed to say, clinging to whatever sliver of dignity I had left. Then I walked out, head held high despite the hot tears streaming down my face. In the parking lot, I collapsed into my car and just sobbed. Through the restaurant window, I could see them, continuing their meal as if nothing had happened. as if I had never even been there at all. I drove home to the house Robert and I had bought 40 years ago. The house where Carlton took his first steps, where he had his first kiss on the porch, where he told me he was going to marry Harlow. The house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in Robert's old armchair, surrounded by photo albums and memories, trying desperately to understand where I'd gone wrong. Had I been controlling? Had I ruined Carlton's childhood? The questions haunted me until dawn, twisting my stomach into knots. By morning, something had shifted inside me. The tears had dried, leaving behind a hard, crystalline clarity I hadn't felt in years. I picked up the phone and called a number I hadn't used in a long, long time. "James," I said, my voice steady, resolute. "It's Bessie Hartman. I need your help." On Monday, Harlow received a letter from my lawyer. Her account? Frozen. What my son and his wife didn't know, what I had kept secret for years out of some misguided respect for their independence, was about to change everything. 3 days after that restaurant incident, I sat across from James Wilson in his office. The cool leather chair felt like a solid anchor against my back as I watched him review the documents I'd brought. "You're sure about this, Bessie?" James asked, peering at me over his reading glasses. We'd known each other for 40 years, since he was a fresh-faced lawyer, and I was a young wife helping my husband build our business. "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied, my voice steadier than it had been in years. James nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "It's going to cause quite a stir. I'm counting on it." What Carlton and Harlow didn't know, what I had kept hidden out of some misguided desire not to appear boastful, was that I wasn't just Carlton's aging mother living on a modest pension. That story was a facade I'd maintained for years. The truth was far, far different. While Robert had been the face of Hartman Construction, I had been its backbone. After his death, instead of selling the company as everyone expected, I took over, quietly, behind the scenes. I grew that business into one of the most successful construction firms in the state. I lived simply, not out of necessity, but by choice. The big house? I kept it mostly because of the memories it held, not because I needed to impress anyone. But the most significant secret was the beautiful colonial home where Carlton and Harlow lived with my grandchildren. The home they believed Carlton had purchased with his successful career as an investment banker? It was actually mine. I had bought it 7 years ago when Carlton mentioned wanting to move to that neighborhood but couldn't quite afford it yet. "Let me help," I'd offered. "No, Mom," he'd said firmly. "We don't need your money." So, I'd purchased the house through my company and arranged for them to buy it through a private sale at half its market value. Carlton truly believed he'd gotten a fantastic deal from a motivated seller. In reality, I still held the deed, and their mortgage payments went into a trust I'd established for my grandchildren's education. It was all perfectly legal, if somewhat deceptive. I had told myself it was what any mother would do, help without wounding pride. Now I wondered if I'd just been enabling the distance between us, allowing them to believe they didn't need me when, in fact, they'd been relying on me all along. "The letter should arrive today," James said, interrupting my thoughts. "Are you prepared for the fallout?" The letter he'd prepared informed Harlow that the credit card she'd been using, a card she believed was linked to a special account Carlton had set up for her, was actually supplemented by me. Every month, when she maxed it out on designer clothes and spa treatments, it was my money covering the difference. Carlton didn't know. He assumed his salary covered their lavish lifestyle. It didn't. "I'm prepared," I said, though my heart ached at what was to come. "It's time for some honesty in this family." I left James's office and drove to the small cafe where I often went to think. As I sipped my tea, my phone rang. Carlton's name flashed on the screen. I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Hello, Carlton." "Mom, what the hell is going on?" His voice was tight with anger. "Harlow just got some letter from a lawyer saying her card has been frozen and that I've been supplementing it for the past 5 years. I finished for him. "Yes, that's correct." Silence on the other end. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Carlton, we need to have a conversation about finances. About the truth. About your house." "My house? What about my house?" I took a deep breath. "The house is in my name, Carlton. Always has been." Another long silence. I could almost hear him processing this information, rearranging what he thought he knew about his entire life. "That's not possible." he finally said, a tremor in his voice. I have the mortgage. I make the payments every month. Yes, you do. To a trust one established. I own the house, Carlton. I've been helping you financially for years, but after what happened at the restaurant, I've decided it's time for some honesty between us. This is crazy, he sputtered. You're making this up because Harlow upset you. Mom, this is exactly the kind of controlling behavior she was talking about. His words stung, a fresh wound, but I stayed calm. I'll be at home all afternoon. Come by when you're ready to talk. Bring Harlow if you want. I'll have all the documentation ready. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From a deep, satisfying resolution. For too long, I'd allowed myself to be pushed to the margins of my son's life, watching from a distance as Harlow poisoned him against me. I tried to buy their love, or at least their tolerance, with silent financial support and never asking for acknowledgement. No more. 2 hours later my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Carlton standing there alone, his face a storm of confusion and anger. Prove it, he demanded, pushing past me into the house. I led him to the dining room, where I'd laid out all the documents. The deed to their house, bank statements showing my monthly supplements to Harlow's spending, tax records proving I still owned Hartman Construction. I don't understand, Mom, Carlton whispered as he flipped through the papers, his voice hollow. Why would you hide this from me? From us? I sat down across from him, suddenly feeling every one of my 60 years. Because you made it clear you didn't want my help, I said softly. But you needed it and I just wanted to be part of your life, even if you didn't know it. Carlton looked up at me, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the little boy who used to run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix everything. Does Harlow? He asked, his voice barely audible. No, I said simply. The letter was the first she's heard of it. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. She's furious. She thinks you're trying to punish her for what happened at the restaurant. And what do you think? Carlton looked at me. Really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time in years. I don't know my own mother at all. The next morning, a car door slammed outside my house with enough force to rattle the windows. I was in the kitchen, calmly preparing tea, though I knew exactly who had arrived. Mom! Carlton's voice bellowed as he burst through the front door without knocking. We need to talk. Now. I took my time adding honey to my tea, steeling myself for what was coming. When I finally entered the living room, Carlton wasn't alone. Harlow stood beside him, her face flushed with fury, designer purse clutched like a weapon. Good morning, I said evenly. Would either of you like some tea? Cut the act, Harlow snapped. What kind of sick game are you playing? I settled into Robert's old armchair, regarding them both with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. No game, Harlow. Just truth. Carlton paced the room, agitated. After our conversation yesterday, I'd expected him to look more humbled. Instead, he seemed reinvigorated with anger. You can't just freeze Harlow's accounts, he insisted. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was for her when her card was declined at Nordstrom in front of everyone? I almost laughed. Is that really what concerns you most right now? Embarrassment at a department store? You're trying to control us, Harlow interjected, stepping closer. Just like you've always tried to control Carlton. He told me all about his childhood, how you suffocated him after his father died. I set my teacup down. The gentle clink against the saucer a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Is that what you believe, Carlton? That I suffocated you? He stopped pacing, his hands curling into fists. You never let me make my own decisions. Every time I wanted to do something, play football, go away for summer camp, even my choice of college, you had to weigh in. I weighed in because I was your mother, I said quietly, my voice resonating with years of unspoken struggles. A single mother trying to raise a son and run a business after her husband died. I wasn't perfect, Carlton. Far from it. But everything I did was out of love for you. Love? Harlow scoffed, her lip curling. If you loved him, you wouldn't manipulate him like this. I fixed my gaze on her. Like what, exactly? By helping you maintain a lifestyle you can't afford? By giving you a house you couldn't otherwise live in? We don't need your money, Carlton insisted. I make more than enough. No, you don't, I interrupted, surprising even myself with my directness. Carlton, your salary is substantial, but not enough for the way you and Harlow live. The house alone would consume nearly 70% of your take-home pay if you were actually paying market rate for it. I reached for a folder on the side table and handed it to him. These are your financial records for the past 5 years. The withdrawals, the credit card bills, the investments that somehow never seem to mature. He reluctantly took the folder, his hands shaking slightly as he opened it. This is an invasion of privacy. Harlow sputtered, but I could see the raw fear behind her indignation. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But sometimes the truth needs to be invasive to be heard. Carlton flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from anger to profound confusion. This can't be right. We don't spend this much on, what is luxury boutique services? Harlow quickly moved to close the folder. It's nothing. Your mother is obviously making things up to come between us. Am I? I asked softly. Carlton, I've known for years that Harlow has been manipulating you. I stayed silent because I didn't want to lose you completely. Every time I tried to get close, she found a way to push me further away. Made up stories about things I supposedly said or did. That's not true. Harlow's voice rose to a near shriek. Remember when you thought I refused to attend Emma's christening? I was never invited. Or when you believed I criticized your parenting at Thanksgiving? I wasn't even there. Carlton looked between us, doubt clouding his features, a glimmer of suspicion finally breaking through. Mom. Harlow wouldn't, she would. And she did. I continued firmly. And I let it happen because I was afraid that if I confronted her, I'd lose any chance of seeing you or my grandchildren. So instead, I helped silently. I bought your house. I supplemented your income. I kept your lifestyle afloat, while Harlow systematically cut me out of your lives. Harlow grabbed Carlton's arm. She's lying. She's always been jealous of me, of us. She can't stand that you chose me over her. I couldn't hold back a sad, almost bitter laugh. Oh, Harlow. It was never a competition. At least, it shouldn't have been. Carlton shook off Harlow's grip, a new weariness in his eyes as he looked at his wife. What is luxury boutique services? He repeated, his voice low, dangerous. Harlow's cheeks flushed darker. Just some spa treatments. You know, I need to look my best. I stayed silent, letting the moment unfold. Carlton turned to a specific page in the folder, his finger tracing down a column of figures. $15,000 in spa treatments. In 1 month? His voice was incredulous. There's a very exclusive retreat in Arizona. I supplied quietly. They're known for their discretion and their plastic surgery. The color drained from Harlow's face. You spied on me? No. I review all financial transactions related to my accounts. The credit card you've been using is linked to me, remember? I simply read the statements. Carlton turned to another page, his movements becoming more frantic. What about these withdrawals? 10,000 here, 15,000 there? I don't know what those are for. I admitted. Perhaps Harlow can explain. The tension in the room was palpable as Carlton turned to his wife, questions burning in his eyes. For a moment, Harlow looked trapped, truly cornered. Then her expression hardened, a familiar mask falling into place. This is ridiculous, she declared, her voice regaining its cutting edge. I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated by a bitter old woman who can't accept that her son has moved on. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at Carlton. Are you coming? Carlton stood frozen, the folder still in his hands, clearly torn. She's using money to manipulate you, Carlton. Harlow insisted, her voice shrill, a desperate plea. Just like she always has. Don't let her come between us. I remained seated, my heart pounding, a silent drum in the quiet room. This was the moment. The precipice. Would Carlton finally see the truth? Or would he once again choose the carefully constructed reality Harlow had built? He looked at me, and for the first time in years, he really saw me, not the controlling mother Harlow had convinced him I was, but the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Mom, he began, his voice uncertain. It's your choice, Carlton, I said softly. It always has been. Harlow's face contorted with fury. If you stay here with her, don't bother coming home. The ultimatum hung in the air like a thundercloud, heavy and ominous. Carlton looked at the folder in his hands, then at his wife, then back at me. I need time to think, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Harlow's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. Unbelievable. She's done it again. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her with enough force to shake the house. Carlton and I were left alone, the weight of decades of misunderstandings and manipulations heavy between us. I never wanted it to come to this, I said quietly. Then why did you? He asked, sinking onto the couch, suddenly looking utterly exhausted. Because sometimes, I replied. Love means fighting for the truth, even when it hurts. Carlton didn't stay long after Harlow left. He needed space, he said. Time to process everything. I understood. The foundations of his life had just been violently shaken. He needed to find his footing again. I spent the next few days in a strange limbo, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Would Carlton come back? Would Harlow find a way to spin this to regain control? I busied myself with work, grateful for the distraction of spreadsheets and client calls, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. On Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Martha Pierce, my oldest friend. We'd known each other since high school, long before Robert, before Carlton, before life had carved its complicated paths through our hearts. I brought wine, she announced, holding up a bottle of Merlot. You look like you need it. I couldn't help but smile. Martha had never been one for subtlety. That obvious, huh? She followed me into the kitchen, watching as I fetched glasses. Bessie, you've been sending all your calls to voicemail for 3 days. Your yard hasn't been fussed over in a week, and... She peered at me closely. You're wearing the same cardigan you had on when I stopped by on Monday. I glanced down at myself. She was right. So, she continued, pouring generous glasses for both of us. Are you going to tell me what's going on, or do I have to drag it out of you? I sighed, taking a long sip of wine before launching into the whole sordid tale. The restaurant, the revelation about the house and finances, the confrontation with Carlton and Harlow. Martha listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Oh, Bessie, she said when I finished. I knew things were strained with Carlton, but I had no idea it had gotten this bad. Neither did I, really, I admitted, a fresh wave of shame washing over me. I've been so busy trying to stay in their lives that I didn't see how toxic it had become. Martha took a thoughtful sip of her wine. There's something you should know, she said finally. Something I probably should have told you years ago. My stomach tightened. What is it? She set her glass down, choosing her words carefully. About 3 years ago, I saw Harlow at the Lakeside Hotel. She was with a man. Not Carlton. I stared at her, uncomprehending at first. You mean, they were very intimate, Martha confirmed. I didn't say anything because I wasn't absolutely certain, and I didn't want to cause problems if there was an innocent explanation. 3 years ago, I repeated slowly. That's when they were having problems. Carlton told me they were seeing a marriage counselor. Unless the counselor was a tall man with a goatee who liked to kiss her in hotel lobbies, Martha said, her voice grim. I don't think that's what was happening. I felt sick, not just at the revelation of Harlow's infidelity, but at the gut-wrenching realization that I'd been financing it. Those mysterious withdrawals, the spa retreats. Had I been paying for her to cheat on my son? There's more, Martha said reluctantly. Last year, at Maggie Wilson's retirement party, Harlow had too much to drink. She was bragging to some women about how she had this perfect setup, a husband who didn't question her spending, and a mother-in-law who unwittingly bankrolled her lifestyle. She knew, I whispered, horrified. All this time, she knew I was supplementing their income. Martha nodded. From what she said, she figured it out years ago. She thought it was hilarious, her words not mine, that you were trying to be so secretive about it. I felt as if I'd been punched directly in the soul. All this time, I thought I was helping Carlton, protecting his pride while ensuring he and his family had the life they wanted. Instead, I'd been played for a fool by Harlow, manipulated just as thoroughly as my son had been. I need to tell Carlton, I said, reaching for my phone. Martha gently laid her hand over mine. Are you sure that's wise? He's already dealing with so much. I hesitated. He deserves to know the truth. All of it. Yes, but timing matters, Bessie. He's just had his world turned upside down. Maybe give him a little time to adjust before adding to it. She was right, of course. But before I could respond, my phone rang. Carlton's name flashed on the screen. It's him, I told Martha, my heart racing as I answered. Carlton, is everything all right? His voice was tight, controlled in a way that immediately worried me. I need to see you. Can I come over? Of course, I said. I'm home now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up without saying goodbye. Martha stood, gathering her purse. I should go. This sounds like a conversation you two need to have alone. I walked her to the door, grateful for her friendship, but dreading what was to come. Thank you, Martha, for the wine and for the truth. She squeezed my hand. Call me later. And Bessie, be gentle with him. Finding out your life isn't what you thought it was, that's a hard pill to swallow. Carlton arrived exactly 20 minutes later, his face drawn and pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Can I get you any coffee? Something stronger? Nothing, he replied, moving past me into the living room. He paced for a moment, then turned to face me, his expression unreadable. I found something, he said, his voice oddly flat. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. Inside were bank statements, not the ones I'd shown him before, but others. Account numbers I didn't recognize. Transactions to places I'd never heard of. One name jumped out, Bahamas Private Banking Limited. What is this? I asked, though a sinking feeling told me I already knew. Harlow has a secret account, Carlton said, his voice cracking slightly. She's been transferring money, our money, into it for years. Over $300,000. I sat down heavily, the statements clutched in my hand. Oh, Carlton, I'm so sorry. He laughed, a bitter, broken sound that held no humor. You're sorry? I'm the one who should be apologizing. You tried to tell me, and I wouldn't listen. I believed her lies about you because it was easier than facing the truth, which is that I married someone who never loved me, he said simply. Someone who saw me, saw us, as nothing but a means to an end. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him that surely it wasn't that bad. But I couldn't bring myself to lie. Not now, when truth was finally, brutally breaking through. There's more, he continued, sitting down across from me, the energy completely drained from him. I hired a private investigator. My eyes widened. Carlton, was that necessary? It was, he finished firmly. I needed to know how deep this went. And Mom, his voice broke again. It's worse than I thought. The investigator had uncovered not just the affair Martha had witnessed, but multiple relationships over the years. Harlow had been systematically stealing from us, building her nest egg while planning her escape. She was going to leave, Carlton said, his voice hollow. The investigator found emails. She and this man she's been seeing, they were planning to take the kids and move to the Bahamas once she'd squirreled away enough money. I reached for his hand, and to my surprise he let me take it, gripping mine tightly. The children, I said softly. How are they? Confused. Harlow told them I'm on a business trip. His eyes filled with tears, raw and open. I haven't figured out how to tell them that their mother has been lying to all of us. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Carlton spoke again, his voice stronger, tinged with self-recrimination. I've been such a fool, Mom. And not just about Harlow. He squeezed my hand. I let her convince me that you were the enemy, that you were controlling and manipulative when all along it was her. We were both deceived, I said gently. He shook his head. No, I should have seen it. The way she isolated me from you, from my friends, the way she always had an explanation for everything, the missing money, the late nights, the constant criticism of you. I wanted so badly to believe we had this perfect life that I ignored all the signs it was falling apart. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, to ease his pain, but I knew he needed to work through this himself. Instead, I asked, "What will you do now?" Carlton straightened, a resolve settling over his features that reminded me so much of Robert. It made my heart ache. I've frozen all our accounts. I've contacted a lawyer, not just about a divorce, but about pressing charges for the theft. And Mom, he hesitated. I need to ask you a huge favor. Anything, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Can the kids and I stay here for a while? Just until I figure things out. For the first time in years, I felt hope flutter in my chest, a tiny, fragile bird taking flight. Of course you can. This is your home, too. It always has been. Later that night, after Carlton left to pack some things for himself and the children, I stood in my kitchen looking out at the backyard where he used to play. So much had changed. So much pain had been inflicted. But maybe, just maybe, from these broken pieces, we could build something new. Something honest. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha. "Everything okay?" I thought for a moment before replying. "No, but I think someday it might be." 2 weeks later, my quiet house had transformed into a home again. The sound of children's laughter filled rooms that had been silent for too long. Emma, 7, and Jacob, 5, brought a chaotic energy that both exhausted and invigorated me. "Grandma, watch this!" Jacob called, executing a wobbly somersault in the living room. "Very impressive!" I applauded, though my heart skipped a beat as he narrowly missed the coffee table. "Maybe we should practice outside next time." Carlton appeared in the doorway, looking more rested than he had in days. "Jacob, what did we say about acrobatics in the house?" My grandson sighed dramatically. "That we save them for the backyard." "Exactly. Why don't you and Emma go see if the sprinkler is still on? It's hot enough." The children didn't need to be told twice, racing outside with whoops of excitement. Carlton collapsed onto the couch beside me. "I don't know how you did it, raising me alone all those years." I smiled, patting his hand. "One day at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time." He nodded, staring out the window where his children were now running through the sprinkler, their delighted screams carrying through the open windows. "The divorce papers are filed," he said quietly. "Harlow's lawyer reached out yesterday." "What does she want?" "Everything," he said with a mirthless laugh. "The house, custody of the kids, alimony. She's claiming I turned you against her and that you're using your financial position to punish her." I shook my head, marveling at her audacity. "Does she really think that will work?" "Her lawyer advised against it," he replied, rubbing his temples. "But Harlow's never been good at taking advice. She's convinced she can still win this." Despite the ongoing legal battle, life in our home had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Carlton had taken a leave of absence from his job to focus on the children and himself, working part-time from home as a consultant. I had officially stepped into the role of CEO at Hartman Construction, no longer hiding behind proxies and figureheads. The announcement had caused quite a stir in the business community. "Widow revealed as secret CEO, how Bessie Hartman built an empire while staying in the shadows," read one particularly dramatic headline. "You're famous, Grandma," Emma had declared, proudly showing me a newspaper article one of her friends had brought to school. "My teacher says you're an inspiration." The house I had once thought too big, too empty, was now filled with life. Jacob's toys cluttered the living room. Emma's artwork adorned the refrigerator. Carlton's laptop and papers spread across the dining table each evening. And I found myself at the center of it all, no longer relegated to the edges of my son's life, but an integral part of it. On a crisp December morning, as snow dusted the ground outside, I stood in my kitchen preparing breakfast when Carlton entered, a strange expression on his face. "Everything okay?" I asked, flipping a pancake. He held up an envelope. "It just came by courier. It's from Harlow's lawyer." I sat down the spatula, my heart rate quickening. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it yet." He took a deep breath, then tore open the envelope and scanned the contents. Slowly, a look of disbelief spread across his face. "She's dropping the custody fight," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's agreed to supervise visitation only twice a month." I stared at him, stunned. Why would she give up now, after fighting so hard? "Because of this." He handed me another paper from the envelope. A grainy photograph of Harlow with a man I didn't recognize boarding a plane. "She's been living with him in Miami for the past month. According to the investigator, she missed her last 3 scheduled court appearances because she wasn't even in the state." I sat down heavily, processing this information. "She's abandoned her own children." Carlton nodded, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face: relief, anger, sadness. "The lawyer says she's willing to sign over all parental rights in exchange for a lump sum payment and an agreement that I won't press criminal charges for the financial theft. Are you going to agree?" He ran a hand through his hair, conflicted. "Part of me wants to see her face consequences for what she did, but another part just wants this over with for the kids' sake." I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." In the end, Carlton chose peace over retribution. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. Full custody to Carlton, a reasonable payment to Harlow that was far less than she'd initially demanded, and the sale of the house they had shared. "What will you do with the money from the house?" I asked as we signed the final paperwork at James's office. "Put it in a trust for the kids," Carlton replied without hesitation. "It's their future, not mine." James smiled approvingly. "I can help set that up. And Bessie, now that this is settled, we should discuss your estate planning as well." I nodded. A decision I'd been contemplating for months finally crystallizing. "Yes, there are changes I want to make." That evening, while the children played in the backyard, Carlton and I sat on the porch watching them, mugs of hot chocolate warming our hands against the winter chill. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking a comfortable silence. "We should move out, find our own place." I felt a pang of disappointment, though I tried not to show it. "Oh, well, of course, if that's what you want. This arrangement was always meant to be temporary." "No, Mom. You misunderstood," he clarified quickly. "I meant we should all move together. This house, it's full of memories, but maybe it's time for a fresh start, somewhere new for all of us." I looked at him in surprise, my heart doing a little leap. "You want us to continue living together?" He nodded, suddenly looking uncertain. "Unless you'd rather have your space back. I know we've invaded your quiet life pretty thoroughly." "Invaded?" I laughed, the word so at odds with how I felt. "Carlton, having you and the children here has been the greatest joy of my life. I was just afraid you might want more independence. We've had enough separation in this family," he said firmly. "Emma and Jacob adore you, and honestly, I don't know what I would have done these past months without you. We're a team now." Tears pricked my eyes. But they were tears of pure happiness, of relief. I love that. A new home for all of us. We found the perfect place 2 weeks later. A spacious house with a large yard, close enough to the children's school and my office, with a separate wing that gave me my own space while keeping me connected to the family. Carlton insisted on paying half, using his consulting income. "It's not about pride anymore," he explained when I tried to wave away his contribution. "It's about partnership. We're building this new life together, Mom. Equal partners." The day we signed the papers for the new house, I finalized another important document with James, my new will. Unlike the division Harlow had expected, where my assets would go to her and Carlton, with nothing for me, this will reflected our new reality. My estate would be divided equally between Carlton and my grandchildren, with provisions for their education and future. Moving day arrived in early spring. As I stood in the empty living room of the house Robert and I had shared for 40 years, memories washed over me. Carlton taking his first steps across this very floor. Robert's laugh echoing from the kitchen. Years of Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations. Quiet evenings alone after they were both gone from my life. "Ready, Mom?" Carlton asked from the doorway, Emma and Jacob peering around him curiously. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." Our new home welcomed us with bright, open spaces and possibilities. We spent that first weekend unpacking and arranging, making the house our own. David came by with a housewarming gift, a beautiful windshield for the back porch, and stayed for dinner. His easy conversation and warm laughter fitting seamlessly into our family circle. That night, after the children were asleep and Carlton had retired to his room, I sat alone on the new back porch, listening to the gentle sound of David's windshield in the spring breeze. The stars above seemed especially bright, as if celebrating with us. My phone buzzed with a text. "Martha, how's the new place?" I smiled, typing back. "It feels like home already." Her response came quickly. "Of course it does. Home isn't a place. It's the people you share it with." She was right, of course. For years I had clung to the past, to the physical reminders of what my family had been. I had tried to buy my way into Carlton's life, silently supporting him financially while accepting emotional scraps in return. But real connection couldn't be purchased. Real family couldn't be maintained through secret bank transfers and silent sacrifices. It required honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to speak difficult truths. The path to where we were now had been painful. There had been moments of heartbreak so acute I thought I might not recover. But through it all, something stronger had emerged. A relationship with my son based on mutual respect and genuine understanding, not obligation or manipulation. And beyond that, I had reclaimed myself. No longer just someone's mother or widow, but a woman with her own identity, her own strength, her own future stretching out before her. The house Harlow had coveted so desperately was sold. The control she had wielded over our family was broken. The secrets that had kept us isolated from each other were exposed to light and air, allowing healing to finally begin. I looked up at the stars once more, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over me. The fortune I had hidden for so long was now being used openly to build something far more valuable than any material possession, a family bound by love and truth, not secrets and obligation. In the end, what Harlow had failed to understand was that the true wealth was never in the house or the bank accounts. It was in the connections we built, the trust we earned, the love we shared. And that was something no one could ever take away from us again.